can't.
Welcome to the Mojo Market Report. Here's your hosts, Dave Sturchio and Chris Gueci.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mojo Market Report here on a Wednesday from Chop Studios. It is Dave Sturchio. It is Chris Gueci. It is A5 Anthony behind the glass. We hope you guys are doing well out there. Hope you guys are having a good week. And, it's Wednesday, so that means... what do we talk about? What's happening? Because there's no game yesterday. There's no game today. There is a game tomorrow. Actually, a good one. Storylines galore out of that one because of the Tom Brady effect and everything that's going on with his career, life, season, whatever. But anyway, today's a big show because there is a lot of movement happening right now on the Mojo Market. And it's in regards of the things we talked about yesterday. Either guys getting benched, guys outperforming, guys just, again, trades.
Injuries,
trades haven't happened yet, right? But there are a lot of things to talk about when it comes to the trade deadline because the trade deadline, as a matter of fact, it's less than a week away. So if you're watching this show on a Wednesday, by next Tuesday, teams are going to be set in stone for the rest of the way as far as the moves are going to be made. And some teams are in. Some teams are, buyers and sellers, just like the Mojo Market. There are teams out there that need absolute help at specific positions. There are teams that are just looking to unload some contracts before, the franchise tags run out or whatever. So there are a lot of guys. We dove in. We checked out the market. We also realized that there's a lot of trickle-down effect that could be potentially happening. We saw what happens, obviously, with Sam Ehlinger, and that stock continues to go through the moon. Which
is it really still on the way up?
People are buying in still, and again, if you miss the boat, sometimes, that stinks for you. But if you put a multiplier on that guy, which, by the way, all players now, I was told yesterday, all players have a multiplier of some variation. So, use it at your own risk. It's a great thing if you really, smack the right guy. But if you don't, it might cost you a couple bucks.
Yeah.
But got to be careful. But trade talk. All right, we'll start with Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins, tight end. The reason why we say him and bring him up is because he is on a franchise tag, right? Which means, again, season runs out, all of a sudden you're a free agent. The Dolphins may be thinking right now, let's get the value for him right now before he hits the open market. And I want to say he's underperformed so far. Like, as far as the season goes, he does the world's worst gritty, but he's got the 26 targets, 18 catches, 197 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's averaging 10 yards a catch. So relative to the other tight ends in the league, I think he's doing rather well.
Yeah, it's a pass-happy offense in Miami. I didn't think it was going to be the case with McDaniels, but I think it's a lot of the fact that that's their personnel. But because of the fact that they have these two receivers on the outside, there's going to be less targets for Gesicki. And in a Mike McDaniels system, I'm expecting the tight end to do a lot more run blocking, and Mike Gesicki is not really he doesn't have good run blocking prowess, we'll say. So he doesn't really fit in the system, and they use the franchise tag on him, so they're going to put him in and play him when they can. But I think he's really more important in the red zone for Miami, but he doesn't do much work in between the 20s. I could see them moving off of him because I don't think he brings much to the offense, and I think actually a backup in that spot where they could get a pick or two. I wouldn't say two, but they could probably get a pick for Gesicki if there's a team that's in the running looking for a tight end. I think that's a little less likely than a lot of the other names we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't see Gesicki getting moved. Because,
I got one team
because they're
in my
still
mind.
good.
I got one team on my mind right now. And if the Dolphins do this, just letting you know, their tight end room gets very, very thin. It's Durham Smythe, not Smith Deer. No? Mrs. Doubtfire? Nothing? Damn. All right. Thought I had him. Hunter Long and, of course, Tanner Connor. So their tight end room gets very, very thin if they move on from Mike Gesicki. But one team in particular, if for whatever reason, it seems like this team is going to be the topic of conversation a little bit today, the Cleveland Browns. They lost Njoku for at least 5 weeks, 6 weeks, right? So they're in the market for a tight end right now, maybe, you would think. A late round draft pick to make sure you have that production out of your tight end position because Brissett, he's only got a couple more weeks to go. But again, he's been looking for Njoku a lot. So the targets are there to be had. So I think that might affect his stock price as well. Right now, he's sitting there very, very low on a Mike Gesicki. If Gesicki gets moved, I say it's a buy because whatever team is acquiring him for those heavy, heavy targets.
Yeah, I would say that I don't think he's going to get moved. If he was going to get moved, you would probably want to get in on that before the move happened. I would just be a little bit hesitant because I don't see he could have a good week this week and it could work out anyway. But I'm going to stay away from Mike Gesicki because it's just there's a lot of other players in this conversation that we're going to have that are definitely more appealing to me.
Okay.
So Gesicki out.
All right, out on Gesicki. So, but there's another guy that started to surface in the news. You know, Mike Tomlin actually went back and backpedaled this and said, no, we're not shopping him, but it's Chase Claypool. And the reason why we bring up Chase Claypool is because of the game that he had last week. He's having himself a decent season considering the fact that he's behind, a couple guys over there and the emergence of a George Pickens. So he's got 44 targets, 28 catches, 266, and a tug. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens are clearly the future of this team. Chase Claypool, still young, obviously. And if the Steelers wanted to make a move and get some capital, I think Chase Claypool could be valuable for a team that needs a receiver. And there's plenty of teams that need a wide receiver right now.
Yeah, I think because of the amount of receivers that are available at the deadline, Chase Claypool and the Pittsburgh asking price is what kind of poured cold water on that. Mike Tomlin, they would be happy to trade Claypool if they were to get the right package, but they were talking about a McCaffrey-like package in return, meaning like a second, a third, a fourth.
Not for
Chase Claypool is not that player, but he is young and he has a ton of potential, and you get him for more than one season, and you get that rookie ability to franchise and et cetera, et cetera. So I do believe that Claypool would have appeal if he was to get traded, but because of the asking price and the fact that they're really not in a situation where they need to pay him money anytime soon, I think Claypool sticks around in Pittsburgh a little bit.
Yeah, I do too. And so now 0 for 2 on these trade guys. But honestly, this was the rumors. These were the interwebs. They start speaking and people start listening and they're swirling around. So definitely keep your eye open for a move like this, because if he does get moved, Claypool is a very, very effective receiver. And again, we'll talk about more receivers with more possible destinations. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. We just talked about the Browns before with, the potential, well, obviously the David Njoku move. He's going to be out for about a month and a half. But there's a bigger name right now. And if you've watched all the projections around the world of fantasy sports, people are starting to get the idea that Kareem Hunt could be moved. This is a big, big deal because what they have right now on their roster is obviously one of the better running backs, top 5 running back in the league in Nick Chubb. But we also saw the emergence last year of Dearness Johnson, right? So that right there is big. And, his usage has gone down. We've seen Chubb get the ball more. I know in the NFL, you kind of look at these offenses and you're like, you always need 2 running backs, but it almost seems like Cleveland's getting away from that. Like Chubb is on the field a lot, man.
Chubb is on the field a lot, but Kareem Hunt has had 40% of the snaps in the games that he's played in all the games this season. So it's not like they're not using him.
Yeah, I know, but it just seems like his usage is
They're not using
down.
him down low. They're not using him in the goal line situations. Nick Chubb completely took over that spot. And look, Kareem Hunt, I don't think he's happy. He was talking about wanting to be traded, and there could be a shred of that involved. But also, you brought up the point, the Cleveland Browns, no matter who they've plugged in, even Felton last year, he had a splash, or it might have been 2 years ago, where he had a chance to start and he performed. So
he did.
I think it's that offensive line and that system, and Stefanski, he's got them running the ball well since he's been there. I don't think that's going to change. I do think Kareem Hunt gets traded. I do think it's time to invest in a backup over there in Demetric Felton. Not Felton, Dearness Johnson.
Yeah.
I apologize. And I do think it's potentially in time to invest in a Kareem Hunt, because I don't think I think you could see him maybe going to a Buffalo Bills. I could see a true contender that needs a running back adding that piece. I don't see just a regular team making that move, because I do think it's going to take a little bit more than the other guys at the position. If you're going to bring in a Kareem Hunt, he's a former rushing title winner. He's a proven commodity in the league. Kareem Hunt demands more at the running back position, but because of the amount that he might demand, it might make teams a little bit hesitant to trade for him. I do think it happens though. So I think the biggest inheritor of the biggest stock rise out of the entire group would be the backup.
Okay,
Dearness
Johnson. All right, yeah, I understand that. And when you mentioned who'd you mention as far as the team to go to? Buffalo, right? I have Buffalo.
The Rams.
I have Buffalo written down. The Rams are written down as well because of the fact that we'll talk about another guy over there in a minute. But Denver. I still think Denver. I know they might ship, but if they win this week, they're going to feel like they're in it. You know what I mean? So they might actually try to add a piece instead of shipping it off their entire team.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about, or at least we've read about the idea of Bradley Chubb being dealt if they lose to Jacksonville. which again, I just,
Well, could we explain that for a second?
Please.
Yes. So you hear teams that are talking about, well, if we lose this week, we'll deal our player Monday. And it's not the teams that are releasing those news. It's not like Denver Broncos and says, hey, guys, ESPN over here, look, if we lose this week, we're going to trade Bradley Chubb. No, but a rival GM calls said team and says, hey, are you guys trading Bradley Chubb? They're like, well, we feel like we're still in it. If we win this week at 3-4, we're not going to be sellers at the deadline. But if you lose 2-5, all of a sudden it's like, well,
it would actually be the other way. It would be 3-5 or 2-6.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's even worse.
Yeah, they haven't had the bye. I was thinking Raiders.
So, but yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, we'll see. I guess we'll see if Denver are buyers or sellers. Speaking of Denver, a nice little segue there. Jerry Jeudy is one of those guys that have been at the topic of conversation. I was talking to our producer Anthony before the show. He's a Giants guy, so he's thinking that there was a little bit of a rumor ski that the Giants were in on Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, to me, feels like a Tyreek Hill, a one-trick pony who could stretch the field, but Tyreek Hill has turned into something more than that, right?
Yeah,
over time. Jerry Judy's still young. I still think there's time to develop.
I think Jerry Jeudy doesn't have that breakaway speed that we're talking about with Tyreek Hill, but I think Jerry Jeudy is one of the most polished route runners out of the receivers that came out in his class. I think in the league it's thrown around too much, but he is one of the most polished route runners. I just think he has a little bit of an injury bug, but because of the prowess, like he was drafted first, or was he second overall in that draft class when I think it was a little high for him. He went over Justin Jefferson. Did he not?
Oh yeah, no, he was the first receiver off the board.
Yeah, so there you go. So like the acumen is there. Everybody believed in Jerry Jeudy at one point, and he's delivered. I think outside of the injuries, he's had a nice little career. I think it's going to be a little bit expensive on Jerry Jeudy because of that reason. He was a former first rounder, like you said, first receiver off the board in a very talented draft class. But Denver has to lose this week, apparently, because they're looking to trade somebody, but only if they're out. And I think if they lose, they're out. And then you could probably see a lot of these guys on the Broncos get moved. Really, if Jeudy doesn't get traded, KJ Hamler is another name that I saw being brought up.
I was just going to say Hamler could be your future if Jeudy is traded. Obviously Cortland Sutton is who he is, and we all like Cortland Sutton around here. KJ Hamler, Kendall Hinton, our guy. We had a big crush on Tim Patrick, and he was lost in the preseason. We're like, damn, what a guy. What a guy. Stand-up guy.
Jerry Jeudy, I could see him getting moved to one of the teams like Green Bay, the
I was
Giants,
just going to say,
but
so the
I
teams...
I don't think Green Bay is going to give up a second or higher or a third-round pick for a Jerry
There's a
Jeudy.
couple more receivers on this list, and we'll get into maybe your priority as a Green Bay investor. You know what I mean? We'll see who you like here. A name that actually is interesting to me because he's been like again, in the fantasy world, he's been like a waiver pickup for everybody for like the last 4 years, right? And it's Alexander Mattison. He's the backup to Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook now dealing with a shoulder the entire rest of the way. He's got the harness thing going on, right? But Dalvin Cook's a dog, and he just continues to outwork, right? But Alexander Mattison, for the Vikings right now at 5-1, we're about, coming off their bye. I feel like to be sellers would be foolish. However, you might get a nice haul for an Alexander Mattison. He's still young, not a lot of tread on the tires, supplementing Dalvin Cook, and of course, in replacement of Dalvin Cook when needed, and his price super duper low. You know what I mean? So how much does the stock rise? Like, would you get in on him right now, even knowing that because we talked about this yesterday, even though that we're knowing that he's the backup or the supplemental back to Dalvin Cook, his stock might shoot through the roof if he's dealt somewhere to be RB1.
I feel like if he's traded for, it's going to be to have a significant role. I don't think that's the case for every player that might get traded. I do think so for him. But because of what you were talking about at 5-1, the Vikings shouldn't be sellers at the deadline. Giving an able body, shipping away an able body when you have a shoulder injury, dealing with your running back is dealing with a shoulder injury already. I don't think it's smart business. But if he does get moved, Alexander Mattison is definitely going to shoot up the ranks. I also think it's a pretty safe investment right now because if he doesn't get moved, I don't see it being a big dip. At the very least, there's some chances that he gets some burn this week because Dalvin Cook's dealing with a shoulder. I know that are they off a bye week this week, Minnesota? So he's probably a little bit healthier, but as you said, they're going to deal with that all season long in Minnesota.
Oh, he said he was wearing the harness for the rest of the way.
Yeah, he's going to deal with that. So, there's going to be chances for Madison to step in, especially in the second half if they have a large lead, and him to pour it on. Because if they're winning in the football game and Dalvin Cook's dealing with an injury, I expect Madison to get a little bit more playing time. I think down the stretch, Madison is going to be used a lot in Minnesota, more so than he would have if Dalvin Cook wasn't injured. And if he does happen to get traded, which I do not see happening, then he's 100% going to be a starting running back. depending on if he gets traded to a team that's loaded. But I could see a Buffalo, a Rams. These are the teams that I think are definitely in on a running back this offseason.
You think
this trade deadline?
No, I understand he's coming off of injury. Cordarrelle Patterson from Atlanta, and they got Tyler Algier down there. But like, do you think Atlanta would be in the market for anybody at this point? I mean, their receiving room is kind of like bleak too, and their running backs. Look, you got Cordarrelle Patterson on the back nine right now. You do. Like, I understand that he's a resurging guy and he changes positions, all that stuff. But like, would you be in on somebody on a running back, a young running back, if you're Atlanta?
No, I'll tell you who should be in on a running back. Philly.
Stop it.
I'm just saying. I think Philly.
They got 15 running backs over there.
Think about it. Think about
Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell. Who else?
You don't think
the other
Alexander
one?
Madison would be the
The other
starter
one.
in Philly right away?
Starter in Philly? No.
Oh,
Over
I do.
Miles Sanders?
I do. I think he does more in between the tackles, and that's what Philly's lacking right now. 100%. If they had Alexander Madison with Miles Sanders to do the Kenneth Gainwell role, that improves that offense tenfold. I think Philly's a sneaky team at the trade deadline where they have some money to spend and
They got
have
extra draft picks.
They got a lot of capital. They can make a lot of moves. They can make noise right now.
Disgustingly, the Philadelphia Eagles are 6-0, and they're also in the top 5 of the draft right now.
with like a lot of money to spend.
Ah, God, I hate to see it. But I'm sure they love to see it. I'm sure all the Philadelphia Eagles fans they're having themselves a week, huh? They got the World Series coming up. This is just fun times. Watch, by the way, I'm rooting for the Philly, which I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd ever root for anything from Philly. But I just, not Astros. Nope, not doing it.
Do it.
Moving on to Cam Akers. We talked about running backs before. This is one of the guys that were actually publicly outed and talked about in the trade department. Sean McVay came out and said, look, he's out. You know, like, it'd be best suited if he found another team. Would they welcome him back? Sure. He said, but the best result would be for a brand new start for this kid. I heavily look at those teams that are one piece away. Cam Akers is still that dude. I truly believe it. And I know this season has not gotten off to a great start for him. And he's coming off the Achilles injury, but he did play in the playoffs last year, and they made their improbable run, won the Super Bowl, right? So you're looking at a Cam Akers, you're like, how much does he have to offer? And I'm looking right at Buffalo right now because Singletary, and obviously they got Dalvin Cook's brother over there, James Cook. Like, I'm seeing Buffalo as like that one piece away, and if you add a Cam Akers, man, it's big. And again, Denver, if they're still in it, I don't know why, but I did write Atlanta. For whatever reason, I just felt like Atlanta would be in on a running back. But like, you look around the league, Cam Akers could still make plays in this league. And I think that his stock right now is obviously, low, but I don't know, man. I just feel like he's got some gas in the tank left.
I don't know. I'm becoming more and more skeptical on Cam Akers as the days pass and no team is really interested in trading for him.
Well, again, the trade deadline's next week. Deadlines make deals. You know what I mean? So,
but he's been inactive for 2 weeks, and apparently he's healthy. He's a healthy scratch, and it's because the Rams want nothing to do with him. To me, it reminds me a little bit like the Todd Gurley situation with the Rams, where nobody knew what was going on, couldn't figure out, what's going. And it was the injury.
McVay just hates running backs.
But McVay, I'm not.
Was Todd Gurley dealt with a McVay as the coach? I forget.
Yeah, it was McVay.
It was McVay who was there?
Yeah,
Interesting.
But look,
He
Todd
hates
Gurley,
running
I don't know
backs.
if Todd Gurley was dealt or if he was just waived altogether.
Well, whatever
I don't
the
know
case.
the facts on that.
It's not on the team.
But Cam Akers, look, outside of that back end of rookie season, what has he done to prove that he's that dude anymore? He had that serious Achilles injury. Him returning early from that showed me that he was a hard worker and that, he bounced back quick. And I was in on Cam Akers. I'm not anymore. Because what team is he going to go to? Buffalo? Is he a better running back than James Cook? Is he a better running back than even a Zach Moss, who I see popping up on the trade block as well? Buffalo, I think they're simultaneously in on a running back, but it's not, and wanting to trade one, but I don't think that they're in on a guy that's just going to be added to the mix. They're looking to bolster their starting back, and I think that bumps everybody else down. I think that's what they're looking to do. I don't think Cam Akers is that guy for them. I think Kareem Hunt is. I think maybe even Madison is. But Cam Akers, there's too much bad juju surrounding him right now. And plus, the Rams pretty much leveraged themselves out of any potential good return investment on him because they don't want him. He's not playing. What are you going to give up?
That is a fair point. Like, you don't say like, yeah, we're going to shop him. It's like, that's a bad look and a bad feeling all around. Yeah, I get that.
A sixth-round pick at best you're going to get for Cam Akers if you're the Rams right now. And the team hasn't done that yet, so I'm a little hesitant.
I don't know. Well, they're calling. Teams are calling apparently, so we'll see what the compensation that the Rams want.
I think there's a better chance that you never see Cam Akers as a starting running back in the NFL again, and his completely bottoms out on his stock price before he gets a starting job somewhere in the league. That's my assessment.
Hot take. Listen, it's there. Anyway, moving on to a couple more receivers. This guy, I actually feel bad for him. I feel like he's been traded 54 times in the last 4 years, and that's Brandon Cooks. But he's at the top of everybody's conversation when you talk about adding a receiver. And look, the teams that are in a receiver: Green Bay, the Giants, Dallas. I think Dallas is still in on a veteran receiver. The Chiefs. Imagine the Chiefs adding a Brandon Cooks or potentially the next guy we're going to talk about. But Cooks right now, his bank value is actually relatively good. That just goes to show you that he's had himself a decent career. And now playing under Davis Mills he's been playing over there. He's got 28 catches on the year, 281 and a touchdown. And I think that the Texans are in on Nico Collins, Philip Dorsett, their youth movement.
I think Nico Collins kind of took over a little bit.
He hasn't really shown
the lead target there.
Everything that I wanted to see out of Nico Collins. But Brandon Cooks could be dealt. And like I said, this guy, I feel like, I know it's not the facts, but I feel like he's been traded a bunch.
He has been traded more often than most other players in the league.
He's just like involved in every trade. Like,
we'll
throw on Brandon
Cooks.
Cooks.
He's been in the rumors. Last year, I fully expected the Packers to make a move for Cooks. He stood pat. And in the offseason, I was like, well, he's definitely going to get moved. Again, they re-signed Cooks to not a huge deal, but they paid him. And he was the one guy that stuck in Houston for whatever reason. But just because they signed him to the contract, now they haven't won games.
Is that something to be said about Cooks, though? Like, that he's always on the trade block?
Well, there's something to be said that he's always on the trade block, but then there's also something to be said that the fact that Texans are the ones that kept him around out of all the people. So he wasn't.
He's just a good quality guy. Just good company guy.
I think there's more to be said for the fact that he's had production, no matter where he's gone, over the fact that he's been moved. I personally, if I had my pick at receivers, I would take DJ Moore because he's the most talented youngest player. But giving up what you're going to have to give up to get DJ Moore, I think Brandon Cooks is the most affordable. And in terms of what a team like Green Bay needs, he would fit right in as their number one. He's got what the Packers need most is experience. And I think Brandon Cooks, they've been kicking the tires on a Brandon Cooks trade for maybe 2 or 3 seasons now.
I've heard that the Packers are absolutely in on a receiver.
Would be a perfect fit. They have targets aplenty to give to somebody. Like if I'm a receiver in football right now, I know the Green Bay looks bleak offensively, but that's where I'd want to go. Because
you're getting passes from Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers is desperate to find somebody that he could rely on. I think Brandon Cooks would fit right in perfectly, or DJ Moore.
Well, you mentioned DJ Moore, and he's our final guy that we want to talk about. DJ Moore. Now, the Panthers, they're an enigma right now. Obviously, they trade away Christian McCaffrey. They get a nice little haul back for him in next year's draft in particular. They don't have to wait long to cash in on that. But DJ Moore now has been rumored for a couple weeks to be moved. Now, the Panthers decided to trip over themselves and beat Tom Brady and the Bucs last week. So now all of a sudden, you got people in Carolina saying, well, we could do this with these guys. Do you still think DJ Moore is on the block right now? I mean, I personally, I would think that people would give like a second or third for him. But I don't know. I'm up in the air now.
I don't think anybody is getting a second or third for anybody right now at that position. I just don't.
I was going to say McCaffrey.
That's a lot.
At that position.
A second and a third at receiver right now for teams that are kind of desperate to trade. Unless maybe a DJ Moore because he's still young and there will probably be a ton of suitors for
Would you give a second and a third for DJ Moore?
I would.
You would?
Yeah.
Next year's second and third?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. Personally, I mean, the Packers need it bad, and I don't think the Packers season
I'm
is
just saying
lost
if you're a
receiver.
GM that needs a receiver, not even just the Packers, like if you're Giants. If you're the Giants right now and you're sitting there throwing the ball around to Wan'Dale Robinson,
I mean,
you just lost your tight end again.
If I'm the Chiefs, I'm not doing that.
I don't know, man. Because think about it like this, and I know draft capital is very important to some teams, but some teams like the Rams, they don't care, right? But like the Chiefs, if they just continue to have the season that they're having, their draft picks are going to be at the back end every round.
Yeah.
So you think about it like that. Like we're going to be in the AFC title game.
Look, if it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you add DJ Moore to that offense. I think it just further confuses everybody on who's going to be getting the ball, but it doesn't. That's a good thing for the Chiefs.
The targets are plentiful to go around.
I think DJ Moore going to Kansas City, it might actually hurt his value a little bit, as crazy as that is to say.
And I think it hurts everybody around him.
But I don't think that the Mojo market would respond accordingly. I think.
Now, in that regard, DJ Moore, and this is why I brought him up, is because if he goes, that receiver room is very, very thin. But Terrence Marshall Jr. is somebody that I think could benefit heavily if DJ Moore is moved at all. Like, I just think that kid might be the future of that wide receiver.
I don't
core.
think Carolina's going to trade DJ Moore. I thought so for 100% fact that
Come
they
on.
would.
I
But
need
if
to
you
see
look,
him somewhere
if you're
else.
looking at the contract that they got rid of with McCaffrey, and it's like, oh, they're selling, and it's like, well, Christian McCaffrey had arguably the worst contract in all of football, and they got a ton of picks for a guy that's played 23 games in the last 3 seasons. So yeah, you move off of that 100%. But when you're looking at DJ Moore and Brian Burns on the other side of the ball, teams were offering a decent haul for Brian Burns services, according to reports, and the Panthers turned it down. It's because you see what other teams have done. Miami Dolphins cleaned house completely, and now look what they're doing. They won if 10 of the last or 12 of the last 16 games or something like that after a complete rebuild. I think that the Panthers would be smart to keep certain young core players around, pay them the money so that there's at least some holdover.
A la Brandon Cooks in Houston. You
Well,
keep DJ Moore. It's like
DJ
same
Moore
thing.
was a Carolina draft pick, though, and Brian Burns were draft picks.
true.
So it's at least the core. And I wouldn't say the core because they don't really have a core. But
no core in Carolina. All right. Well,
I think DJ Moore stays, though. And
There
I don't
are a
think
couple-
I think it's just normal for his Mojo stock. I don't think it goes up or down there.
Okay. Couple other moves that we could talk about real quick, just to brush over, would be, I'm interested. We had this conversation yesterday. Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan was obviously benched in favor of now the stock rising phenom known as Sam Ehlinger. Does Matt Ryan get moved? Like, is there a team that would want a veteran backup, or at least there's no team he would start for? But like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Outside of an
I got this
injury,
feeling.
outside of an injury this week for a contending team, that has money, I don't see it happening. Matt Ryan's contract dictates that. You're going
That's very
You're going
true.
to trade for Matt Ryan's contract right now as a backup quarterback. Not me.
What about? I
got one.
I got one too. Is this the same? Are we Spider-Man memeing this one?
Josh Jacobs.
No. What? No. What? No. Josh Jacobs, the guy we've been harping on all week.
I think Josh Jacobs, out of all the players in the NFL right now, would get the most haul for the Raiders. Like all the guys we talked about, any team would be lining up. They would give up probably a second, maybe even higher for a Josh Jacobs right now. Think about what Christian McCaffrey just netted. The Rams and the Bills would be both all in on a Josh Jacobs trade. Let's hear this out. He's in a contract year.
Yeah.
Let's just say the Raiders don't plan on paying Josh Jacobs. And there's no guarantee that just because he's having the season that he's having that they will pay him. Because they didn't pay him this offseason. Maybe that was to see, prove it. But it's not like Josh Jacobs needed to go out and prove it. I think the Raiders knew what they had in Josh Jacobs.
Okay.
Truthfully, right?
Yeah.
But teams like Buffalo and the Rams, I think it would actually be a knock on Josh Jacobs' value right now if he left the Raiders the way that offensive line is playing. But I do see a potential Josh Jacobs trade. Monitor what happens in Vegas this weekend. I don't know if they're playing in Vegas, but if the Raiders lose, it's really hard to sit here and say a 2-5 team has any promise going forward. And if they have no plans to sign the back, we're going to find out next week because Josh Jacobs' name will come up in trade deadline talks. No question about it.
Have you actually read this anywhere? Or that's just your mind
I
at
did
work.
see a couple people talking about it, but because it was prior to last week's game, the article, the Raiders won that game. So now I think...
And he also balled out.
And he balled out. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. The Raiders would be happy for having keep balling out, especially if they want to trade him, because that just increases the trade value. Look, if the Raiders lose this week, just keep your eye on that situation. And the Raiders do have some young, talented backs that were all the rage coming in preseason.
There
It
was.
was Zamir White, Amir Abdullah. These guys were getting talked about in high praise. I actually put Zamir White in like my bargain basement, the pitch for Mojo. Zamir White was one of the first players I talked about because they really talked a lot of bad stuff about Josh Jacobs all offseason that we didn't really like him. He's not a good fit. And Zamir White was the guy that spearheaded the this is the guy for fantasy. This is the keeper.
Listen, Jacobs heard you. And he read it. He just didn't write back.
Oh, yeah, he didn't.
Jacobs is having a hell of a year.
I think Jacobs is a name to keep your eye on.
That would be
at the deadline.
You heard it here first on the Mojo Market Report that Josh Jacobs
But who is
could
your guy?
potentially whoever loses out on this New England quarterback situation.
No.
Bailey Zappi. What?
They're definitely not trading Bailey Zappi.
Well, then they might trade Mac Jones.
I doubt it.
Why have both? What's the point of that?
Also, did you see
they're
Mac
literally
Jones?
they're the same guy.
Mac Jones' interception hit the wire that holds the camera. It wasn't even his fault. First of all, second
What?
of all,
Really?
Yeah.
Why did I not see
Belichick
that?
said that he wasn't pulled due to poor play.
I pulled him because of the wire.
I mean, he was a game time decision.
like,
He was
what?
essentially a game time decision. So a quarterback that plays a series or two,
and I saw him jumping up and down on the sidelines in pregame. He was ready to go. That was a performance thing. That was a New England pressure situation. The crowd was all over Bill.
I don't think Mac Jones gets moved after 1 week of Bailey
But like
Zappi.
you're saying now,
and Bailey Zappi didn't do well in that game.
He didn't do well.
He did not come in and play well. So it's like if Bailey Zappi came in and won the game or won the, it's a home game against the Bears
and they lost.
And he looked like garbage. So yeah, trade Mac
clearly
Jones.
that's not going to be a move to be made. But anyway, keep your eyes open, folks. And again, specifically on the Mojo Market, because you've seen what happens when these guys get moved, when these guys get dealt, when they're benched, when the next guy's up there. We're going to be talking about. I'm telling you right now. Just keep your eyes open on all these backups. We talked about it yesterday. Go back and watch yesterday's show of the guys you might want to invest in right now. I saw an ad that ran on Twitter yesterday about our Breece Hall situation. And, yes, all in on Breece Hall, right? But yes, there's egg on the face. But at the same time, if you were in on Michael Carter, all is well. You know what I mean? So this is why you got to watch the market. It's very fluid. It moves very, very quickly. So do not miss out. You can follow Mojo over at Mojo, right? That's it. That's as easy as it is. At Mojo on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter. Join the Discord. All right. I found out some heavy information on the Discord this morning where now I'm panicking with either my portfolio and or fantasy stocks, right? Or fantasy lineups. So the Discord is packed with information. Go join it. Go join that conversation. Head on over to mojo.com to find out all of the happenings. All those bloggers are great. We get a lot of our information from those guys. So those guys are great at mojo.com. Of course, if you're watching the video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Great content throughout the course of the week. You see the opening bell, you see risers and fallers, you see Jordy everywhere. Sporty Jordy's doing shorts left and right. So be sure to follow us, give us a like, show us some love. For Dave Sturchio and Chris Gueci, this has been another episode of the Mojo Market Report. We're back with the start of Week 8. Tomorrow, Thursday Night Football, Baltimore Ravens taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My fault. That's on me.